Call the meeting in order, and I'm going to also have to do a roll call this morning. Mayor Pro Tem, you here? Councilman Reinbark, you here? Councilmember Spears, you here?
I'm here.
Councilman Waddell, you here? Councilmember Andrews, you here?
Here.
Councilmember Joyner, you here?
Here.
And the chair is here. We'll have several presentations tomorrow night. C1 is a consent agenda, approval of the minutes. C2 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Bars Recreation LLC in the amount of $172,394 for the replacement of a playground at Halliburton Park. C3 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Sport Court Carolina Incorporated in the amount of $224,004 for the resurfacing of tennis/pickleball courts at Robert Strange Park and Greenfield Park. C4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to apply for the North Carolina Attorney General's Office Environmental Enhancement Grant to help fund invasive species mitigation at Greenfield Park. Yes, sir.
Can we go back to C3?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to just, if I could get Ms. Beatty to come up, I just had a couple of questions I'd like to ask her about this.
Good morning.
Good morning. With regard to resurfacing and restriping, these courts will still be striped for tennis. Is that correct?
Robert Strange will still be striped for tennis. We're converting the 2 tennis courts at Greenfield to 6 dedicated pickleball courts.
Will the nets be up on a permanent basis?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't have to. I know I went to Legion Stadium a week ago yesterday, all excited to go and play, and you have to get the code for the blue box, open it up, and then erect the tent, and then I guess whoever who puts it up has to maintain some responsibility to get it back in the box to secure it.
Yes, sir.
And and do it yourself and some assembly required ain't in my wheelhouse, so it didn't do it. And also while I was there, I was noticing that I was with someone who plays a lot of pickleball, and it's confusing because it's the ones at Legion are tennis courts, and they've put the striping on there for pickleball.
Yes, sir.
And it's confusing because you still got the lines there for the out of bounds for for a regulation tennis court. So the ones at Robert Strange will stay tennis and pickleball.
That's correct.
And the 2 at Greenfield Lake will become 6 dedicated just for pickleball.
Yes,
with
sir.
nets up to stay up.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so are those the only 6 pickleball courts we have under your umbrella that are strictly designed for pickleball?
Within the city of Wilmington, that's correct. Olson Park Phase 2, which is a Parks Bond project, is currently in design, and the scope of that project will have dedicated pickleball courts at Olson Park. The number of which we don't know. It will depend on what the bid amount is, but we're looking between 4 and 6 at Olson.
Okay, so all told, I think I got word from you sometime back that we have like 16 courts that you can play pickleball on, but only 6 of those after this is done, plus whatever's coming at Olson.
Olson.
Will only be dedicated to pickleball. So I guess my point in bringing this up is we've got probably one of the not probably, but most assuredly one of the biggest demands that I've ever seen in my time up here for something along the recreation lines, pickleball.
Yes, sir.
And having been lobbied hard by people that play it, I've learned a little bit about it. It's more of a social game than say tennis. And a whole lot more people can play pickleball versus tennis because you're not chasing, you're not running back and forth, even if you're playing doubles across that large court. It's more forgiving to one's knees, feet, ankles, what have you. And I think that I just want to go on record as saying we really need to drill down on this and see what we can do about partnering with somebody to have more facilities, because it really is. I mean, we're seeing people out there that are being active right now that have never had an opportunity to do it. Golf doesn't get it for them. Tennis can't. and we don't have that many courts anyway. So I just want to, I'm glad to see this happening, but when they share courts, it's kind of, it gets you by, but that's all it does, it gets you by.
Yes, sir, the demand is certainly there. The city of Raleigh is getting ready to build a 70-court combination tennis, pickleball, and another new sport called paddle, which is indoor, which is a combination of tennis and squash.
Wow. What else can they
It's
come up
coming.
with? Thank you very much, Amy.
You're welcome.
C5 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Fulford Heating and Cooling Incorporated of Supply, North Carolina for removal and replacement of HVAC systems at fire headquarters in the amount of $189,900. C6 is a resolution authorizing the purchase of audiovisual equipment at 525 North 4th Street for Wilmington Multimodal Transportation Center Phase 1B from Clark Powell Associates Incorporated for $88,501.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
is this just our portion as a lead planning agency, or other member jurisdictions making an investment in this as well for the audiovisual? I know it was mentioned that it was in the budget, but in the MPO budget.
This is the total amount, is the 88,501. 80% of that's being funded by federal funds. The remaining 20% is proportionally based on population by our member jurisdiction. So each of the MPO's member jurisdictions will be contributing toward the purchase of this equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Public hearings, PH1 is an ordinance directing the housing inspector to vacate, close, and repair the dwelling at 233 Racine Drive, Unit 3 is unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, and directed that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. PH2 is an ordinance directing the housing inspector to vacate, close, and repair or demolish the dwelling at 1004 South 7th Street as unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, and directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. I do have one question going back to PH1, Mr. Manager. In respect to this one on Racine Drive, that is a homeowners association. I know some of the other ones are not in an association, so the association usually takes the legal action to do this. Why specifically are we involved in this one?
Mr. Renner.
Morning, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. So 233 Racine, Unit 3 is a townhome. It's in the Ashton Townhome Complex. This is primarily a sanitation issue. It's a very severe hoarding issue on the inside, and most HOAs only affect the outside of units. So that's what we're looking at on PH1.
Okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
This one and the other one, I've read this. I don't know how old some of this message is. Is everything moving forward on these two? I mean,
Correct. Yeah, with PH1, we intend, and we're already working on soft numbers of what a clean out and sanitation looks like for 223 Racine. And then 1004 South 7th Street is, if you've seen the photos, it's definitely a demolition.
it's what?
It's definitely a demolition project.
And the first one, it looked to me, and just looking at the pictures, it looks like it's been used as a warehouse or a storage facility. I mean, I know I've seen people where they hoard, but there's also they can live in it, or they can pathway through the hoard. This looks like it's just stacked in there.
The owner had been living there on and off prior to our involvement. She did do some clean out in there, and we can get into more details tomorrow night. But currently it is vacant, but there is a sleeping area set up in that.
There is what?
There is a sleeping area set up in one of the bedrooms.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. PH3 is an ordinance amending the official zoning maps of the city of Wilmington to rezone property located at 3933 Princess Place Drive from R10 medium density single dwelling district to O&I office and institutional district. And then PH4 is a resolution granting or denying a special use permit for property located at 3933 Princess Place Drive for Link Incorporated to operate a group home residential in the office and institutional district. And this is, of course, a land use quasi-judicial hearing.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
City Attorney would like to have a word with the council on this.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, good morning, and good morning, rest of council. I just wanted to remind you, I believe that there are only 3 members currently on council who have ever actually done a quasi-judicial hearing as a member of council, maybe even only 2 of you, because we haven't done one since 2021. And so I will be sending out some information to you about that procedure. But in general, just for your knowledge, a quasi-judicial hearing is going to involve a lot more procedure than a regular legislative hearing. The witnesses will have to be sworn. You'll have to make specific findings of fact that are a lot more detailed than what you normally do with your consistency statements. We've got most of those printed out for you in the resolution itself, should you choose to adopt it. But I will be sending out some general information for you. I did want to remind you, though, that you've got PH3 first, that's the general rezoning, and then PH4, that's the SUP, and that in general you should not be talking to individuals outside of here about PH4, which is the group home piece of that. You're free to talk to anyone you want to about the general rezoning, but you shouldn't receive any evidence outside of the forum tomorrow night with regard to the group home aspect of the special use permit. So I just wanted to put that reminder out there and let you know I will be forwarding some additional information to you today to just give you a brief glimpse of what that's going to look like tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you. 01 is an ordinance transferring $25,000 in funds from the general fund to the Streets and Sidewalks Capital Projects Fund for the rail realignment project. And then item 02A is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the North Carolina Department of Public Safety for a grant in the amount of $600,000 for the continuation of the opioid overdose intervention program. 02B is the ordinance appropriating the funding for the North Carolina Department of Public Safety for a grant in the amount of $600,000 for the continuation of the opioid overdose intervention program. And then we go on to resolutions. R1 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Wilmington and Beaches Convention and Visitors Bureau to provide tourism enhancements utilizing $650,000 of American Rescue Plan Act funding. And this was continued from our March 5th and March 19, 2024 meeting. And then R2 is a resolution authorizing filing condemnation actions for the acquisition of certain right-of-way and easements for the Wrightsville Avenue Sidewalk and Roundabout Project, and this is funded by the Transportation Bond. R3 is a resolution awarding a construction contract to FSC2 LLC, better known as Fred Smith Company, in the amount of $2,467,340 for the Fifth Avenue Street and Sidewalk Improvement Project. And this was budgeted impact is from our Streets and Sidewalk Rehabilitation Capital Maintenance Projects. R4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter an agreement with Lakeside Partners of Wilmington Incorporated, subsidiary of Good Shepherd Ministries of Wilmington Incorporated, for the construction of 32 units of supportive rental housing utilizing $2,113,506 of Home Investment Partnership Program, American Rescue Plan Program, Home and ARPA funds. And then R5 is the resolution in support of the North Carolina Department of Transportation's NCDOT application for the U.S. Department of Transportation's multimodal project discretionary grant for the replacement of the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge. This is also coming from Councilmember Waddell. And then R6 is a resolution amending the City Council's travel budget. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Waddell.
Just at the bottom of the travel budget, there's a line item with a separate account for governance travel pool. Maybe I missed it years past. What is that?
Not looking at that information, I don't have availability of it right now,
It's
but
$20,000.
there is an allocation that is made on the behalf of each council member, and then there's a $20,000 reserve that is held in sundry in order to bring money forward if necessary in these particular types of situations, and that's from where we would be borrowing or allocating the money. It's actually not a budget amendment, it is just a resolution authorizing us to move the money. This has been an issue that has from time to time been a topic of conversation with council. We have not raised the travel budget in several years.
Yeah, I understand. I've not seen that governance travel pool before, but so it's a reserve for,
yes, sir.
for these express purposes.
For this purpose, yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
And then RP1 is council's appointments committees for boards and commissions, and Councilmember Rivenbark, who is the chairman of that committee, will be giving us a report, and that concludes this portion of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, we have two items for you after agenda action items this morning. First of all, we have Benjamin Hughes, who's with the North Carolina Department of Transportation, who has a presentation that he wants to give regarding driveway access permitting, and this also correlates with the WMPO doing a presentation on traffic impact analysis. So if we will, we'll start with Mr. Hughes and let him come forward. Okay, maybe we won't. We'll start with Scott James.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Scott James. I'm currently a transportation planning engineer with the Wilmington Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. And I thank you for this opportunity to present some of the behind-the-scenes work that staff does in review of private development applications, specific to the traffic impact analysis, and as Mr. Hughes will present later, the NCDOT review of the driveway permit process. These are staff reviews for projects that require traffic impact analysis or connection to the public roadway. Oh, and also Mr. Bill McDowell is a critical part of this review. So just as an overview, the WMPO has a planning service area. It includes the city of Wilmington, 3 counties, portions of Brunswick and Pender County, the entirety of New Hanover County, and several jurisdictions therein. Within the WMPO, we have a technical services section. Okay, thank you. Within the MPO, we have a technical services section, and our duties include the review of traffic impact analysis, the coordination of the traffic impact analysis in our service area, and we also serve on technical review committees for the listed jurisdictions below. Our primary audience is the traffic consultant and their clients. We speak with them frequently. They meet with us. They submit documents. We provide comments back. Only upon approval do those documents go public. Our next audience are planning boards and commissions, public bodies such as this one, and of course, any inquiries from appointed or elected officials. And then lastly, but not least, the general public who benefits from the results of our review and experiences any improvements to the infrastructure to mitigate the determined impacts of a private development. Our review is multidisciplinary. We are engineers, we are planners, we are administrators, and we are government authorities, and we meet weekly, and all aspects are brought to every review. Essentially, we work with the facts and the data, and then we review the design standards, the guidelines, the policies, including the state legislative direction on guidelines, and then we review the analyses, the recommendations from the private contractors, our own review, and then we come to a conclusion that we publish, preferably in English. I'm going to spend a minute to go through what happens behind the curtain, because when the staff report is made, it tends to be a summary and it will not include many details. But before we get to the recommendations that are in the staff report, there will be data collection that is agreed upon. The data collection will determine whether we should have school year data or summer data, a seasonal factor, whether there's a historic trend we need to identify, whether there's a future infrastructure project that we need to take into account. Then there's a review of the existing regulations, the permitted uses, the maximum intensities of any potential build, any height or density restrictions that would change the layout and site access, plus if there is an applicable master plan that would determine the private development's entitlements and future responsibilities. We also participate in discussions of waivers or variances, and the process is necessary for those. In addition, When we get to the private development review, with regard to traffic control devices, we will discuss whether there is a need for new traffic control devices, modification of existing traffic control devices, and at whose responsibility. We will also review the geometry of the intersections, the future intersections, the current intersections, and the proposed intersections of a development. We will look at the need for and the design of additional turn lanes, including the length and the dimensions, the speed, the taper, lots of details if you're curious. We also use a traffic model. The traffic model looks at the current condition and then estimates the future conditions. We also look at the identified roadway improvements, if they're already planned in the State Transportation Improvement Program or another adjacent development is committed to making improvements. And then lastly, and this is sometimes reflected in the staff report, we comment on the current and anticipated level of congestion, and this is related in terms of delay. And I have a couple of slides on that topic later. And of course, always, we take into account the safety elements. Most members on the weekly review committee are going to see a project more than one time. They're going to see the project sometimes initially as a concept. Then they're going to see it when it comes in for a traffic discussion. Then they're going to see it when it comes in for a site plan. That is the technical committee review process. They will also see it during the public hearing. On occasion, staff will come and speak to a project, and members of the committee, myself, Dennis Volkanowitz, the city traffic engineer, or the DOT will be present for the public discussion. Then when there's a site access permit, the DOT will see the project again to see if it's in compliance with the previous proposals. During construction, members of our committee are actually site inspectors. They will see if what's being built is what was planned. And then finally, if there's anything that's released to public ownership, such as a signal, they will see it upon completion and turn over to the state agency. Comment about some of the information that shows up in staff reports. We do have a term in traffic engineering, it's called a level of service. It is often used to categorize delay. I wanted to take this opportunity to speak to what we intend that number to mean or that letter to mean. It is the individual's delay at the control device. Singular vehicle, how long they wait before they receive service. Unfortunately, we have adopted the A through F ranking, which implies that F is unacceptable. Many of us think of grades. It's really a category that was selected to show the length of time you wait. And for reference, a level of service A means that for a signal, you receive the green in under 10 seconds. It's very rapid service. And for an unsignalized intersection, such as a stop sign controlled, if you receive access under 50 seconds, it's considered F, but if you receive it in under 10 seconds, it's also considered A. So a little context for those grades, if you will, in the staff reports. Also in the staff report is another level of service. It's a capacity level of service. This I use as a sort of an analogy to a bucket. How many vehicles can fit on a certain segment of the road? We still use the same A through F, but in this case, A is considered up to 60% estimated capacity of the road, which means to obtain a level of service A, you actually have a fair amount of underutilized asphalt. Just for reference, a level of service capacity rating can exceed 1. So there will be 1.1, sometimes even 1.5. They're all level of service F. It doesn't mean the road is full, it just means the demand exceeds the current capacity of that segment. We can go into greater detail, but this is an explanation of why you can have a capacity level of service and also a congestion level of service. Trying to stay at the 20,000 foot level if I could, I wanted to at least share with you some of the thoughts behind our process. First, when we review a model, we need to realize there are limitations. Some models have a rosier picture of the future, some overestimate the consequences. It is our job to know where those assumptions are no longer realistic. We have a lot of data. Occasionally, our outputs are very precise. It does not mean they are accurate. So we try to get on the right side of the screen more than the left side of the screen. We have a great deal of information. We are often a clearinghouse of prior approvals, prior agreements, prior anticipated conditions that the private sector does not know and the public may not remember. It is our job to bring that information into the conversation at the appropriate time. We also read the rule books. It is our job to know which rules apply, when, and which are variable and subject to appeals or waivers. And we have responsibilities for the public safety. This is the ultimate check on our recommendations. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, though I would point out my colleague, Mr. Ben Hughes from the NCDOT, has a second presentation, which will cover in greater detail what the DOT's responsibilities are. Also present, Mr. Volkanowicz, the city traffic engineer, for the difficult questions, and we anticipate Mr. Stoney Mathis, the division traffic engineer, for any questions on the DOT system.
We have a question here, sir.
Sir.
I just have a sort of broad question. When you talk about models and what goes into your models, is there anything that would cause you to calibrate to be less optimistic about our growth rate? And I guess what I'm getting at is we get lots of phone calls, lots of emails, lots of articles in the press about exponential growth, exponential development, and the impact of that on traffic. How does that play into your projections when we know that there's growth, but it can be hard to pinpoint what that's going to look like?
Yes, sir. We do have a background growth rate calculated percentage that is part of our traffic model construction, if you will. We agree on that growth rate percentage. It is derived from traffic counts taken periodically on the facility in question over the past 3 or 5 years if we are fortunate with our data. For the sense of exponential growth or rapid growth, we also have experience of individuals who've been doing the reviews for 10, some 15, some 20 years, so that they can put a bit of a reality check on the popular conception that growth is exponential, because they remember 10 years ago doing a similar review that had a similar background growth calculation, and it wasn't that much different. However, we can adjust the background growth rate. If we feel the area in question is particularly active, we have the discretion to increase that growth rate to reflect what we think is development that has yet to be caught in the data.
Yes, sir. Ms. Andrews?
So just to follow up on that, and then I had another question. So what is the growth rate that you're looking at right now for the city of Wilmington?
We do not do a citywide growth rate. We do by facility.
Area.
So on a given street or a given roadway segment, we have continuous count locations that allow us to have data collected annually, sometimes more frequently than that, and it allows us to look at a year-over-year change. So for a project on a known segment, we would look at the past 3-5 years of data counts that we already conduct to see if the traffic has been increasing and then what growth rate to apply. We also look at the future build year, because if they're not going to be completely built for 10 years, we don't want to predict that every year will be 3%,
Right.
because that's an unrealistic expectation.
And then I had a question about the level of service ratings and the level of congestion ratings. How many intersections approximately in Wilmington are level of service F?
That is a question I will defer to the city traffic engineer,
Okay.
because I do not track the congestion levels in the city of Wilmington
Okay.
at the intersections.
Good morning. That's
morning.
a very difficult question. We have different periods of the day. If you were to look at an intersection over the course of 24 hours, we have very good levels of service over that. But when you're talking about those peak periods, which is what these studies are generally looking at, if I had to throw a number out there, I would probably say 30% of our intersections can operate at F during one or other or both of the peak periods. Just a lot of congestion on our roads. When these studies come forward, we're always adding traffic, or typically adding traffic to these models. So while F sounds bad, it's functioning. You know, we're not in gridlock, and it's for a very short duration of time. A peak hour here, you know, we're looking at an hour, you know, hour and 30 minutes. You go to a larger city, you don't want to be on the road between 3 and 7 because you know it's terrible. So just keeping it in perspective, these are very short time period studies, but when you look at the data and when you run the model and it shows an E, a D, E, or an F, you know, it's like, boy, that's bad. What can we do about it? But it's a model. It's a theoretical representation of the inputs and generating an output. So.
Okay, thank you. And then that next slide that talks about, is that about the same percentage number for that level of congestion? Or was?
Yeah, I don't know if we have a model that has Wilmington, you know, all Wilmington
Highway
roads.
capacity, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Roadway capacity. Do we have an indication of about how many of the intersections are at a level F on the capacity?
Okay,
Or
so
greater than
I
one?
apologize because this was my attempt to clarify and I'm failing. The purpose of this category is to give an estimation of the amount of vehicular throughput a segment can process. So it's like a pipe. How much can flow through the pipe basically at one time. When you ask citywide, one, as Dennis explained, we would need to know the time you wanted to examine. It can't be 24 hours. We don't have that level of data or that bandwidth to calculate. And then if you're asking about from a driver experience, this is the delay at the control point. This is what will register with motorists or anyone describing a network, because this is where the movement stops. And it stops for this amount of time before it then is allowed to proceed. This is movement. This does not have a stop element. This has sort of a crowding and how full is the road, but you would need to be above the road to know what those numbers are. And we use this as a way of determining should additional lanes be provided or should the current lanes be managed. This is much more appropriate for most conversations because every driver knows what it is to wait at a light and not get through for 80 seconds. A minute in a car standing still, everyone recognizes that.
Right.
And so this is the level of service that most often is discussed.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate in the beginning when you said that you're trying to publish your reports in English, and I think you did a very good job with this presentation with that. I spent the bulk of my career as a technical writer, and I used to tell average people that I translate engineer into English, and I told engineers that I'm the village idiot. That's what I'm paid for, so sorry if I ask stupid questions, but that's what we're trying to get to so that the public can understand this, so thank you.
I'd like to ask a couple questions. Yes, and this is more commentary. This has nothing to do with you folks, but, you know, you folk, MPO, I know Lucas sat on it, Charlie sat on it, I've sat on it, have identified the traffic issues and the traffic impacts, especially the roads that are owned primarily by the great state of North Carolina. Unfortunately, the state doesn't have the funding necessary to make those improvements. We know what they are. We know, for example, we just had a discussion there at Bradley Creek and Greenville Loop Road. That intersection should have been improved years ago without any development. It was on the books, but it's been pushed further and further out. And I would imagine there's a number of roadways that the state currently maintains and owns that they know have to be expanded. South College Road, right there, College and Oleander, another significant intersection. We've got 5 interchanges that we've been waiting for over a decade now to be improved that were promised to us, that the money's there. So that's one side of it. And so the state has not kept up with the level of growth, not only in this area, but the entire state of North Carolina through their primary source of funding has been the gas tax. And we know that it is absolutely blasphemy to even say anything about raising any kind of additional revenues, which means taxes. So I hope that the state comes forward with their new model, which is basically, it's going to be a user fees. And we're seeing the big discussion with the Memorial Bridge about tolling it, an existing roadway, and they're just saying, well, we add a lane here, we add a lane there, we can constitute it as being a new road. And I wish the state would be upfront with the people in this community and the state about what they're going to plan, because I believe that's the model they're going to use. Every governor has talked about it. Everybody's talked about how do we raise additional revenues. With now, we're moving on 2 million additional people in the last 2 decades. We'll have another million in the state. A lot of them come this way. They love the coast. My concern is that with the closing of the memorial, with 30,000 people coming into the city and the diversion of that traffic, there should be a good modeling, and I'm sure you folks have it, as to the amount of people that are coming into the community every single day from the significant growth areas in Brunswick County. When we see a community like Leland grow up to almost now 30,000 people, we know that a majority of those people that are working are coming into the city for their jobs. And the growth rate is happening in the outline. The explosion of growth is happening in the outlying areas. Yes, we have growth here, but if you look at it on a percentage basis, we're not growing anywhere near what the surrounding area is growing. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other part of it is, and I'd like to ask this question, is the consistency in regards to these improvements that you folks are asking, are they unified across the entire MPO jurisdiction? For example, we may have a different policy in the city as opposed to what's happening in the county of New Hanover. They don't require sidewalks, I don't believe, in their subdivisions. Maybe they've changed their rules now. And the way they take on traffic impact analysis, is it consistent across the board in Leland, in Brunswick County, in Pender County, in the unincorporated areas, or is it different in every jurisdiction? Your suburban growth impacts significant urban growth, but your urban growth, because of the way we have our city laid out, which is a lot more grid-oriented, moves quicker and better. So what is it? Is it consistency or not? Or is it different across the board? Does anybody know the answer to that question?
Well, I thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the qualifying concluding statement. The answer is no one knows, but we work to make it consistent.
So no one knows. So in all these studies that we do, we don't look across the board to see, are there consistencies in the policy?
If I may speak to what we do that has a degree of consistency, we convene weekly, and all of the member jurisdictions that are in the planning service area are on that call. So they listen to what their colleagues in other jurisdictions are doing. It's a shared call. It's not a public call. The DOT is the source of our policies. They're also, with certain limitations, the technical determinants of our requirements. The documents that we generate are consistent. We reference all of the proper authorities in our single document that's the approval letter under the WMPO's coordination. But each jurisdiction is allowed to have their own site development rules. The City of Wilmington's Technical Review Committee does not use the same rule book as the town of Leland or New Hanover County. And as you mentioned, there may be a requirement for sidewalks that isn't in every jurisdiction the same requirement. And we respect that, but we convene weekly and we sort of listen to one another, and I encourage people to comment when there is a question on what is a recommended practice, what is a preferred solution, should there be a choice. But we cannot impose.
I understand.
And we also have to give each community their flexibility.
So the short answer is there is no consistency across the board in a small geographic area like this.
I think, sir, the short answer is there is consistency in the review, but there is flexibility at the local level. We do not exempt the local jurisdictions from DOT requirements. That would be consistent. We do not exempt local jurisdictions from the MPO's coordination. That would be consistent. But we do not impose one jurisdiction's rules on another.
Well, I'll just say this. I mean, we talk a lot about affordability. And one of the impacts to affordability, the significant impact to affordability, is infrastructure improvements.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of people that are developing in the city of Wilmington have to build those into their models because the state will tell you, we don't have the money to do that. And if you want to get it approved up here, somebody's going to have to make that improvement. Unfortunately, it's going to be the person that's going to be developing the property. And I think we need to be upfront with people and truthful with each other here. But when you're talking about millions and millions of dollars to make an improvement to a roadway that the state should have been making all along, it adds to the overall cost of that lot. And I think that is one of the hidden costs that we never want to share with the public because developers, in many cases, are vilified. But at the end of the day, you have to make that improvement to make that development happen. Those costs go up, and they are passed on then to the consumer. And I don't think that's what, this is not anything to do with you or NPO, but this is just something across the board. The state has said the developer's going to take care of it. We're not going to pay for it. But it does add the cost, a significant amount of cost, the bulk of the cost to any kind of affordability in our marketplace, whether it be rentals or whether it be single-family homes. I just want to make that statement for the record because it's never talked about, and it needs to be talked about more and more. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Give me a second. Give me a second.
Good morning. I'm Ben Hughes with NCDOT. I'm the district engineer for New Hampshire and Brunswick counties. Oversee all the driveway access permitting and encroachments within our area. Just want to go in, begin on discuss traffic impact analysis and driveway access permitting. So when a commercial development connects to any NCDOT roadway, it requires a driveway access permit from NCDOT. In certain areas, local government approval is also necessary to streamline the process to avoid conflicts. Both reviews are conducted simultaneously. For a medium to large developments which can significantly impact public transportation infrastructure, a traffic impact analysis is conducted first. This helps identify necessary modifications to ensure safe and efficient access points for the development. So NCDOT has a threshold that is 3,000 trips per day, which is approximately 300 peak hour trips. In my district for New Hampshire, Brunswick County, there's always a lower threshold of 1 hour peak hour trips, city, county. So that is actually utilized for a traffic impact analysis. NCDOT wouldn't really require it until 3,000 or 300 peak hour trips. Some typical developments that would for 100 peak hour trips, you have 20,000 square feet of retail, 100 single family homes, 85,000 square feet of office, 135,000 square feet of industrial, or 115 room hotel. For 3,000 trips per day or 300 peak hour trips, it's more around 55,000 square feet of retail, 300 single family homes, 250,000 square feet of office, 400,000 square feet of industrial, or about a 350 room hotel. So a common question is, will development have to upgrade the public roadways? So it really depends. If the impact of the development is minor, little to no changes to the nearby roads may be necessary. However, if the development significantly affects transportation, upgrades may be required. Road improvements are usually necessary if the intersection approaches delays increase by 25% or more without maintaining the same level of service. Service level decreases by at least 1 level of service or reaches F. Turning lanes have queues exceeding available space requiring extensions. And so what are some of the common roadway improvements that you'll see? For unsignalized intersections, common improvements include installing new traffic signals, converting to roundabouts, implementing reduced conflict intersections, used to be called super streets. And you see those out on Route 17 in the Leland area or up in Scottsdale. Adding new left or right turn lanes and extending existing turn lanes. Some common upgrades that you'll see at signalized intersections. Added dedicated left or right turn signals, that's green arrows or flashing yellow arrows, extending or adding lanes, adjusting signal timing, coordinating those signals with nearby intersections. These improvements help enhance the traffic flow and safety at these intersections. So what are some common improvements made at driveways specifically for development? Some road enhancements or new existing driveways often include adding turn lanes, installing signals, building roundabouts, and converting median crossovers along highways like US 74 and 17 to reduce conflict intersections. So with the traffic impact analysis, you have a final conclusion recommendation section. The recommendation section provides a condensed overview of the analysis results, pinpointing intersection challenges and proposing enhancements to help mitigate the effects of the proposed development and facilitate the integration of the new driveway connections. It is important to recognize several limitations may impact the feasibility of implementing the necessary enhancement. These constraints commonly include restricted availability of right-of-way, conflicts with utilities, environmental repercussions, and adherence to a general statute which actually restricts the imposition of roadway upgrades on low-volume roads. It's a common question I get. So can NCDOT deny access? The simple answer is no. So in compliance with General Statute 13618, the NCDOT is obligated to ensure property owners have reasonable access. NCDOT's role involves regulating the location, design, construction, and maintenance of those connections. Get this question a lot too. So is a TIA always necessary? Short answer is no. Under regular NCDOT permitting, our local office will conduct a review of the driveway connections for smaller developments to assess potential turn lane requirements through a turn lane warrant analysis. This is irrespective of the development size. This assessment can be conducted internally without the necessity of a formal TIA. So with that, I'd like to open up for any questions y'all may have.
Any questions for Mr. Hughes? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we have an update for you this morning that is going to be given as one update in two parts. One is associated with the homeless outreach program that the city and the county are taking part in. And then more importantly about that, we need to give you an update on the ARPA funding that's associated with that. So we're going to start with Ms. Moretti to give you an update on the funding, and then Captain Tom Tillman will come forward and give you an update on the homeless outreach program.
Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. This morning we wanted to bring you an update on one of the ARPA programs with the $25.9 million that the city received several years ago. That's the Homeless Outreach Program. So this program was adopted and began in October of 2022. It is a joint program, and we have an interlocal agreement with New Hanover County where they provide social workers and the city provides police officers to assist them. This began as a pilot program and then extended through December of 2024. So any extension beyond that with the joint program would require approval by both boards. So the county, they provide the social workers and we provide the police officers. We're both responsible for our own personnel costs, uniforms, training, equipment, and then the county has provided the cost to discard any of the items in the areas that they go in and clean up. So the city had allocated $1.6 million for this program. And again, to cover our officers' salaries, uniforms, vehicles, training, equipment, which is also equipment for the officers and the vehicles. So we have estimated what that total for those expenses would be through December of 2024. That's when we have to have funds obligated by, and it's about $1 million. So we have $600,000 that will be remaining. And so to keep it with the same homeless outreach program, the intent of that program, we reached out to the police department and asked if there were other items that they could use these funds for that would help them with this program and with their efforts in working with the homeless community. So again, we have to have these funds obligated by December of 2024, and then we have to have them spent by December of 2026. So keeping these funds all with that original program, we wanted to come to council and update you on the changes with this so that you could get the information as well as provide any feedback that you had on it. So with the information, working with the police department, these are some of the items that they feel would be useful in what their efforts are and working with the community. And so at this time, Captain Tillman will come up and kind of go over what these items are, and then we'll have any questions, answer any questions that you have on the program.
Morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, Captain Tillman, over the Special Operations Division, the Homeless Outreach Unit. They're under my division. Sergeant Ron Evans is here. He can answer questions about the unit if you have them. Yep. Can you hear me better, Councilman? There we go. Sorry about that. The finance had approached us about these monies, and we quickly had a look at this. Chief is going to come up here and tell you about the items that we looked at. We tried to make sure that they were going to be multi-use items. So yes, these items will benefit the homeless unit, but these items are all items that will benefit the city and the police department as well, in spite of the homeless unit. I just want to make sure that y'all knew that right ahead of time. That some of these items come from our experiences during Hurricane Florence and other storms that we've had that could come to use for other citizens of Wilmington and the police department. So the citywide camera upgrades are probably the biggest expenditure in this project. I know council has urged the chief in the past to expand the cameras. This project's going to include a pretty significant expansion of our cameras, specifically in the central business district of the downtown area. Those cameras are invaluable. You know, in my former capacity, I was the division commander of the detectives division. Those cameras help us solve cases, period. They always have. The camera's the best witness. And the expansion of our camera system into the central business district of downtown is going to be vital. It's not only vital to us being able to help the homeless population. These cameras will help us, understand, where the homeless migrating to if they're migrating in the CBD. But the cameras are going to be out. There's additional cameras even outside of the CBD, which are in areas which are frequented by homeless. The Sting Center basically looked at their current cam center. The Sting Center, y'all know that's the Integrated Intel Center at the police department. They basically look at the current integrated systems that we had and try to find the holes that we had in our systems, and these cameras fix those holes. So that's the expansion of the camera program. In addition, these other things, this 50 kilowatt diesel generator trailer, that can be used for a multitude of things, but we have it to run. There's a laundry trailer and a shower trailer that we're looking to purchase here. This side-by-side gator is going to be equipped with a stretcher so that we can extract homeless people from the woods. We've had a bunch of situations where we've had homeless people way back in these woods that needed medical attention, and we had no way to get them out. You can imagine trying to, push a gurney through the woods. It's not that easy. So some of this is certainly humanitarian in nature for the homeless population, but that's what the side-by-side is for, and the trailer that goes with it. The homeless unit also all have pickup trucks, and there's quite a bit of money here for truck equipment upfits and for equipment for those officers. It includes AEDs and several other items that would help those officers in their mission. And do y'all have any questions about that equipment in particular?
On this, yeah, go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, with regards to the camera upgrades, I know we've been discussing or thinking about doing some sort of integration of our actual camera system so that they're not running on multiple. Right now they run on a few different systems, and I think there's some gaps there, and you alluded to that a little bit. Well, is this just upgrading the actual physical cameras, or is this kind of upgrading the software?
New cameras, going onto the same system that we're already using in the Sting Center.
Okay, so we are integrating them all into one system?
Yes.
Or is
Yes,
this
sir.
part of that process?
That is part of the process, to integrate those into the existing software that we're already using in the Sting Center. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
With the cameras, are they, and I've read something about, they have cameras that they can ID you. Would they be those kind of cameras, or these are just general cameras?
No, these are high definition cameras, and we're wanting the cameras to maintain that high definition at night. That's kind of difficult to get a camera that will do that, but these are good cameras. But they're not necessarily integrated into facial recognition software as of yet.
Right, that's what I was asking. Thanks.
Recently, within, say, the last 2 to 3 years, I had, myself and former council member Neil Anderson had made a request to tie in the cameras around the New Hanover High School, 13th and Ann, from a layperson standpoint, I thought you just went out there and put them up, but there's a network they have to be tied into, and it got pricey. Is that something that I see $600,000, we're getting a lot of bang for our buck, it looks like, for the $600,000, and that may not be able, but is that something that can, we're still where we were in years gone by at that school, and I think it's needed. I know a lot of parents have called and request anything that can be done to ensure the safety of the kids.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the integration of those cameras. That's not something that I researched before I came in here, but certainly we can look at that. And if there are other camera systems, whether they belong to the city or the county, that we might be able to integrate into our systems, and we can we can certainly slash some of these items to prioritize the cameras.
I'd appreciate that. And also, with regard to the CBD, I'm sure that we're not the only people that have cameras functioning in that area. A lot of private individuals have cameras. Do we know who they are and can call on them to help when maybe we've missed it?
Yeah, so that's one of the first things that our detectives do when they get on the scene of a crime is they start looking around to see what kind of cameras are available with other businesses. And usually the businesses are cooperative, but sometimes we have to serve official legal papers on them to get the evidence that we need.
Thank you.
Tony, this is for Tony. Do we have the capacity to make certain that we can put all these cameras in operation as quickly as possible? Because I know it's coming through our IT department. We don't want privately or contract out with anybody to do that, correct?
Yes, sir.
So we do have the capacity?
We will have the capacity.
Okay. Yes, sir. Mr. Joyner.
Talking about, can we go back to that slide that has the, thank you. Again, talking about the cameras, can you tell me specifically how the homeless outreach program is going to use the cameras? Because for the CBD, that's where the downtown task force is operating. And I think even elsewhere in your presentation, it's listed that those task forces don't overlap in geographic area.
That's correct. So currently the downtown task force deals with homeless that are in the downtown area. But that doesn't mean that our outreach units can't go down there and help those people. I know that I've seen our outreach units downtown, but as far as enforcement goes, the downtown unit is handling enforcement issues down there. Now, the Sting Center can monitor those cameras and relay information to either the downtown task force or the homeless outreach officers, wherever these cameras are at, to direct them to direct services to those personnel.
So, I guess, just wanting to know, is the extra surveillance for safety concerns of new criminal conduct, or is it for identifying folks who need to be contacted for services to be provided?
All of the above.
All of the above?
Yes, sir.
Continue on, sir.
And the next slide just shows pictures of some of these. That laundry trailer, that's what it looks like. You can see that, and the 8-stall shower trailer is up above, and then the generator that will run both of those. At any rate, with that, I'm going to turn this over to Sergeant Evans. He can give you a little bit of update on where the homeless outreach unit is at. Sergeant Evans.
Thank you, Captain. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. Just to give you a quick recap on the unit within itself, again, like was mentioned before, we work with HHS, some social workers, within the team, within the unit. Like the captain had mentioned before, as far as CBD, the downtown area, we do not go into the downtown area as far as enforcement. Now, the social workers will go down there, and then, of course, we will assist downtown if requested, but we primarily stay out of the CBD. Since the inception of this unit, literally hundreds of incidents, calls of service, interaction with those folks, the population, the unsheltered population, this unit has come across. And I know that, when people tend to think of someone who is homeless, It's not necessarily someone who is a substance abuser or things of that nature. I think the latter part of last year or the early part of this year, I made contact with a gentleman who, life has just started lifing for him, took a hard left turn, got a divorce, lost his business, lost all of his money, and he was sleeping out in the woods. So that's just a little bit of difference of what one would typically think when they think of homeless people. They, cover multitude of different different persons. In regards to our enforcement, I've had my team start to generate pretty much a spreadsheet keeping track of what we've been doing, just like we've been done in the past year. But since this year, since January, we have had over 100 interactions with homeless people, trespassing, services, all kinds of things. But primarily for trespassing, we're keeping a tighter track on what we're doing with that. For those who are violators, for those of them who are trespassing, typically if it's a first offense, we give them a warning. You can't be on this property, you have to leave, you have to go somewhere else. If it's anything after that and it's that same person, then we're going to start, enforcing. You're going to either get a citation or be arrested for essentially second-degree trespassing. The contacts of those 100 people, there have been over 50 times that has happened, and this has all been since January. We've made contact with those folks. They've either been arrested, they've either received a citation, or they've either received a written warning. And for the most part, they are compliant, they are understandable. That is not the case in some cases. As a matter of fact, one of our team members, Officer Miller, who's in the chamber with us this morning, made contact with a gentleman, I think about a week ago. And he was homeless, he was trespassing, he was, giving her information that, he wasn't supposed to be on the property. Through her investigation, and while she was talking with him, she noticed that he actually had a razor blade in his mouth while she was talking to him. And so, fortunately with her and the assistance of another officer, they were able to, subdue him, get him charged with CCW and things of that nature. So it just goes to the scale. Vast majority of the population that we have interaction with, they're compliant. They understand what we're there for, what they can and cannot do. But we have those few who, just don't want to play by the rules, and it presents a safety issue for my team. But at the same time, we are staying vigilant and staying on top of our game to ensure, just like every other officer across the agency, gets to go home at the end of the day. Mutual aid, the department has had mutual aid agreements established since the inception of this unit when it comes to NCDOT, railroad companies, private citizens, private businesses, pretty much saying, Wilmington Police Department, yes, you have my permission to be on my property to enforce this trespassing for any unauthorized persons that are on the property. And we will do that accordingly. And last but not least, there is no secret that the population has increased significantly. I think since the inception of this unit, not only that, over the past few years, primarily since after COVID. So what we have done is created a sort of kind of a streamline for the team members to receive complaints, inquiries, and that website there. As a matter of fact, I received a call from a citizen just yesterday, who lives on Orange Street, and she had concerns about some of the population being on her property, and so I'm going to go visit her this morning. But that website there is for the general public, for city officials who have inquiries, complaints, concerns about the population. They can reach us there.
Mr. Waddell?
Yeah, Sergeant Evans, this may be anecdotal, but I want to commend you and your team for the hard work and remaining vigilant on this. I firmly believe that the enforcement piece, or the threat of enforcement, is working. And again, this is anecdotal. I know the numbers may be increasing overall, but the trespassing specifically, this time last year, I was getting a phone call, a text, an email a day, every day,
yes,
from a business owner or from someone. It's been very quiet. And so I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I appreciate you putting a scalable plan in place that is active, that's that's direct in how we're looking to handle this difficult issue. And I think it truly is a model that will be improved upon, but also replicated in other communities. So I just wanted to commend you on the work that you're doing and tell you to keep it up.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
One question, there's a number that citizens that perhaps have property and somebody's on their property that they can call. I believe it's a non-emergency number.
Yes, sir.
Do you have that on top of your head?
Yes, sir. It's actually the non-emergency number to the 911 center. So if they want to call and have an officer respond, more than likely they will send one of the team members if we're available. But that number is 452, 6120. 910-452-6120.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for doing a great,
Yes, sir.
I agree
Thank
with Councilmember Waddell, it's quieter.
Yes, sir.
I had a visitor visit me from Rock Hill, South Carolina, and she asked me yesterday, she says, I noticed you guys don't have a lot of problems with the homeless, because she didn't see any because we were downtown. So my question is, and you mentioned that the numbers have increased, where are they?
All across the city. I don't have the specific numbers, but I just know from being on this unit for the past year and then talking to some of the team members and talking to some of the officers in the patrol division, they're seeing an increase of numbers. They are, to be honest, it's almost like whack-a-mole with some of the population. As you can remember, we had the huge encampment in the NCDOT property at Kerr and MLK. When that got shut down, the population sort of kind of scattered everywhere. So we're still hitting pockets or seeing pockets of persons on public property, on even still some more NCDOT property. So we're just trying to, do the best we can and recognizing all of those places and doing what we need to do.
Okay, and you mentioned that you partner with other partners. How's that working? Like when you give a citation to like this person, do you connect them with a service on that spot, or how does that work? I'm curious.
One of the first things we ask them is, would you like help? Would you like services?
Okay.
There are some people that don't. They
Sure.
understand the predicament that they're in. They don't want any assistance. But yes, if we do end up signing or arresting someone, once we get done with the enforcement side, we will let them know, listen, we have these services that are available to you if you would like them, and then it's just a matter of them accepting them or not.
Do we keep any kind of record of those who have accepted? And
with our partners at HHS, yes, sir. So the social workers, the team members that work on the outreach side, they'll get in contact with the social workers and they keep track of all of those folks and then the services that they are offered and receiving.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor?
I remember back when this thing first got, you were in front of us, it's probably been a year ago, I guess.
Yes, sir.
And there was a comment made or one of the bullet points that when you deal with these people, sometimes it takes as many as six contacts with an individual before it kind of sinks in, I guess is the right way to put it. Is that kind of still holding true? Like the example you just gave, you talk to somebody, do you want the services? They say no.
In some cases it is. We had talked about building that rapport with them and that level of trust. So with some citizens or some people within that population, it takes us a little bit of time because, of course, when they see the police, they automatically think, I'm in trouble or whatever the case may be. But I tell folks all the time, it's not a crime to be homeless. It really isn't. At the same time, that does not give the population free rein to just wreak havoc and trespass and defecate and leave trash and all of those things on people's property. So it's, in some cases, we have to take this kid glove approach, if you will, to let them know, first and foremost, you can't be here, but secondly, I'm also here to help. So with our officers, our partners at HHS, what can we do to try to make life a little bit better for you?
Yes, sir. Have there been any instances like we see on TV around some of the rest of the country about homeless people getting into someone's vacant home or somebody when they're away from their home, they get in and then they're hard to get out? Have you had any issues like that, sir?
We've had some cases. As a matter of fact, there was a woman and her husband who owns property at Kerr and Birchwood, I believe. They own a few homes there that they're getting ready to tear up and demolish. And there were a few homeless people that were getting inside there and squatting, if you will. We made contact with some of them. There wasn't an issue with getting them out. You know, they knew they weren't supposed to be there, and we, you know, took whatever enforcement action we needed to take. But there are not a lot of cases like that as far as folks going into people's homes or vacant properties and just staying there. But we have had our fair share.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Waddell?
This is also going to be probably anecdotal, but less anecdotal maybe coming from you. What percentage would you say of the individuals that your unit encounters are suffering from some form of mental health or appear to be suffering from some form of mental health issue or episode? And again, I know this is shot from the hip, but.
Sure, yeah. I don't know. I will get back with you on that. I will have to get with our HHS partners to see, you know, what the numbers or percentage are of those who are suffering from mental health. So I will find that out and get back to you.
Well, and I asked that to say, there's this idea that the city of Wilmington and New Hanover County, for that matter, are supposed to be the ones that are just going to handle all of this. But I think a lot of these, again, anecdotal, but a lot of these folks may be coming from surrounding counties that don't have the services that we do, and I think it's high time that we take a regional approach, and this is a bigger discussion that we intend to have. But we have a regional approach where those counties are, you know, have to come to the table, and especially with regards to mental health and substance abuse issues, and put some services in place in their communities as well. It's not fair for us to be. We can certainly lead the way, but it's not fair for us to be the ones bearing the full weight and burden of this. So I know we do have a joint city-county meeting in the coming weeks, next week maybe, but will you be there? Will your team be there at that?
I have not heard of it yet, but more than likely we will be. Okay. And ironically, that's something that I mentioned to my team just the other day as we're dealing with the population and, you know, trying to develop this rapport, making our inquiries. You know, I asked them a question, where are you from? What brought you here to Wilmington? So that's something we're going to be looking into as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Andrews?
Just a quick question. I like this email address. I wanted to know that a lot of young people don't do email. And
sure.
That non-emergency number that you mentioned for the police department, does that number receive texts as well?
I don't believe so, but I think the 911 center, well, they don't receive texts. Come on. Online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Mr. Joyner?
I just want to say thank you for all that y'all are doing. As somebody who works in the court system, I see the progress that's being made there as well. And then I think a data point that's come to mind for me that would be very useful for us in the joint meeting, if staff could take a note of this, we talk a little bit about how substance use disorder is a part but not all of the problem, how mental illness is part but not all of the problem. I would be interested in if we could get some figures about exactly how much of the problem that is, and I think that would inform perhaps our strategy moving forward.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that, you know, you have 4 social workers and 4 sworn police officers. Don't we need more?
More is always better. I'm sure the chief and the staff are going to make some changes with that. I'm not at liberty to speak. I don't know if he wants to say anything about that or not, but I believe at some point we will be adding additional officers to the unit.
Okay, and just with that in mind, are there any people in training for this special task? Because I know that the kind of officers that you need to do this work is a different kind of caliber of officer.
Yes.
Is there any kind of, if one of the guys goes down, is there somebody in the wings that you could just put in next?
I'm not sure.
Not sure about that.
I'll
Okay.
let the chief answer on that.
Right.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chief.
Yes, sir. We survey all of our officers to see what their interests are. And if we do have a vacancy in the unit, the first thing we would do is look at those surveys to see who, in fact, is interested in doing that work. And I will be involved in making the final decision because this is a very delicate task that we want them to carry out. They have to be an enforcer, but at the same time, there has to be a lot of compassion involved with it. And just to clarify, there are actually 5 officers assigned to the unit. There are 4 out of the ARPA funding. And about a year ago, we made a decision to assign 2 additional officers to focus in on trespassing. One of those officers ended up resigning to go to another agency. So we currently have the 5th officer working with the original 4 officers, and we've transitioned some of those 4 original officers into the enforcement role.
Okay, good deal. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
That's it for this morning, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. With that, we stand adjourned. We have an audit committee after this meeting. Okay. Here, audit. Okay. That we stand adjourned.